On April 19th, a shadow nearly 300 feet long stretched across the surface of the Gulf of Oman, and within 6 hours, the entire balance of naval power in the Middle East had been rewritten. The vessel was the MV Tuska, an Iranian-flagged cargo ship roughly the size of an aircraft carrier and sitting prominently on the U.S. Treasury Department's sanctions list. It was making a push through a naval blockade, trying to reach Bandar Abbas, Iran's busiest port. The USS Spruance, an Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer, cut it off in open water. For 6 straight hours, American voices came over the radio with the same unrelenting message. Motor vessel Tuska, clear your engine room. You will be subjected to disabling fire. The Iranian crew didn't budge. They held their heading. That's when the Spruance's 5-inch Mark 45 deck gun spoke, putting a direct round straight into the Tuska's engine room and killing its propulsion entirely. Within minutes, U.S. Marines from the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit fast roped onto the deck and took control of the ship. First shots fired in this blockade, first boarding, and it played out in real time for the entire world to watch. Trump posted about it immediately, announcing they'd blown a massive hole in the ship's engine and that the cargo was being inspected on the spot. This wasn't just enforcement, it was a message delivered at the barrel of a gun. But what happened to the Tuska is only the opening move, because the Pentagon has made clear it isn't stopping at one ship. According to exclusive reporting from the Wall Street Journal, the United States has launched a campaign to seize every Iran-linked tanker operating in international waters over the coming days. Washington is flooding the region with its most elite assets in rapid succession. Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, SEAL commandos, Seahawk helicopters, the amphibious assault ship USS Tripoli, and not one but 2 full carrier strike groups, the USS Abraham Lincoln and the USS Gerald R. Ford, both now repositioned in the Red Sea and Gulf Theater. Layer on top of that F-35C squadrons, Super Hornets, P-8 Poseidon surveillance aircraft, and the AI-driven drone swarms of Task Force 59, which are digitally tagging every vessel moving through the Strait of Hormuz. Right now, between 25 and 35 Iranian-linked tankers and cargo ships are being tracked in real time across Hormuz and the Gulf of Oman. Bloomberg and the New York Post have both described this as a new phase of the naval blockade, one that reaches well beyond the Middle East. The picture couldn't be clearer. Hormuz is no longer just a choke point, it's a hunting ground, and the hunt has barely begun. To understand how we got here, you have to go back to the morning of April 18th. That's when the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps made the decision to open fire on commercial shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. Around 20 merchant vessels immediately changed course, steering toward Omani waters to get out of the line of fire. The IRGC targeted at least 3 oil tankers that day. One of them was the Suezmax-class Indian-flagged tanker Sanmar Herald, hauling 2 million barrels of Iraqi crude. Tehran had supposedly cleared the ship to pass. The captain's name was reportedly on the approved list. But as the Sanmar Herald approached the Omani coast, IRGC fast attack boats opened fire with no warning, no radio call, nothing. The audio that leaked from the bridge captured a crew in pure shock. In those same moments, a nearby container ship was struck by a stray round. 3 commercial vessels were targeted in total, and at least 1 took direct damage. The world got a very clear look at just how far Iran was willing to go, and it was in that critical window that the groundwork for the U.S. boarding operation was laid. Trump posted a live performance video of Frank Sinatra's My Way on Truth Social. Military analysts read it as a signal that the operation in Hormuz had officially begun. Now the question is whether the assets Washington has stacked into the region can actually unlock the strait and keep it open. Because what the Pentagon has activated isn't a routine patrol. It's a naval and air buildup at a density not seen in the Gulf for decades. At the core of it are the Arleigh Burke-class destroyers. The USS Michael Murphy and the USS Frankie Peterson Jr. passed through the strait in early April and took up forward positions. Behind them, the USS Gerald R. Ford, the largest aircraft carrier ever built, moved back into the region via the Red Sea, accompanied by 2 destroyers and a combat-ready air wing of 90 aircraft. The USS Abraham Lincoln is operating in the same theater, establishing a second carrier strike group, 2 full carrier battle groups positioned simultaneously in the Gulf, right under Iran's nose. But the most critical piece of this deployment isn't the carriers themselves, it's the boarding teams standing by on every destroyer deck. VBSS teams, meaning visit, board, search, and seizure squads, are ready to move on lower-risk intercepts. For ships that resist, the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit is on standby, operating out of the USS Tripoli, and specifically trained for opposed boarding operations. For the highest threat scenarios, SEAL commandos come into play, capable of fast roping onto a moving vessel from MH-60 Seahawk helicopters, launching off destroyer decks or amphibious ships. And then there's the USS Lewis B. Puller, an expeditionary sea base carrying Special Operations Forces and AH-64 Apache attack helicopters, which have been sent on direct patrol flights to counter Iran's fast attack craft swarms. The air coverage is equally broad. F/A 18 Super Hornets and F-35Cs provide air superiority from the carrier decks. P-8 Poseidons are mapping every acoustic signature beneath the surface. MQ-4 Sea Triton drones can stay airborne for hours on end. KC-135 and KC-46 Pegasus tanker aircraft are keeping the entire airborne fleet fueled around the clock. Over the last 48 hours alone, the number of C-17 Globemaster 3 flights into the Middle East hit a historic high. At least 8 transport aircraft were tracked heading into the region. Multiple aerial refueling tankers have been under continuous observation across European and Middle Eastern airspace. According to Flight Radar 24, the most tracked aircraft on April 18th were largely U.S. refueling tankers. At least 18 F-35As were transferred from RAF Lakenheath in the UK to the Gulf. On top of that, F-15E Strike Eagle squadrons and a 10 Thunderbolt II aircraft have also been rotated in. But for the IRGC, the most unsettling piece of this whole picture isn't the jets. It's the AI-supported drone army Washington has deployed throughout Hormuz. Unmanned surface vessels and artificial intelligence algorithms are now blanketing the strait, simultaneously pulling the acoustic signature, thermal image, and hull profile of every ship that moves through. Even if a vessel changes its flag, it can be identified by the sound of its own propeller. A tanker that switches off its AIS transponder is automatically flagged the moment it enters a 5-mile radius. The Gulf has been turned into a digital fingerprint scanner. Silent, precise, and invisible. Washington is maintaining 3 carrier strike groups at sea, 5 separate jet fleets in the air, and an AI surveillance network in the digital layer, all simultaneously. This combination is being deployed at this intensity for the first time in the history of the Gulf. And at the center of all of it sits one undeniable truth. The odds of an Iranian ship staying invisible in international waters have now been reduced to 0. There's another dimension to this operation that goes beyond economics. For years, Iran has been moving not only oil but weapons through these same sea routes, ballistic missile components, drone engines, cruise missile parts, all destined for the Houthis in Yemen and Hezbollah in Lebanon. The U.S. boarding authority means severing those supply lines in a single stroke. If that pipeline gets cut, Tehran's regional influence could collapse within months. This blockade doesn't just hit Iran's oil revenue, it chokes off the entire axis of resistance, and Washington intends to do it without firing more bullets than absolutely necessary. The preferred location for intercepts is telling. The U.S. plans to conduct boarding operations not inside the narrow Strait of Hormuz itself, but in the Gulf of Oman and the Arabian Sea. Inside the strait, Iran's fast attack craft and coastal missile batteries can react in minutes. In open water, U.S. destroyers hold a full 360-degree field of fire and complete radar dominance. The choice protects American personnel and strips Iran of any clean pretext for escalation. There's also the coordination between CENTCOM and Indo-Pacific Command. Iranian oil isn't only being tracked in the Gulf, it's being followed along routes through the Indian Ocean, the Strait of Malacca, and the South China Sea. Even if a tanker makes it out of Hormuz, it can be intercepted again off the coast of Malaysia or in the Andaman Sea. Iran's alternative route strategies have been rendered useless before they even begin. But it would be a mistake to think this story is one-sided, because this massive American buildup is running headfirst into equally massive risks. The Strait of Hormuz is only about 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. In that constrained corridor, the IRGC Navy has spent decades stockpiling its asymmetric threat arsenal. The first danger is naval mines. Iran's stockpile is estimated to exceed 5,000 units, most of them magnetically triggered and capable of catastrophic damage to large warships in shallow, narrow waters. The U.S. has deployed unmanned underwater vehicles to counter this, but even the discovery of a single mine can force a destroyer off course for hours. The second major threat is fast attack craft swarms. Iran has over 180 fast attack boats in its inventory, most armed with guided missiles or rockets capable of attacking simultaneously from multiple directions. Their goal isn't to sink a target outright, it's to overwhelm radar and defense systems all at once. Even with a Phalanx close-in weapon system capable of firing 4,500 rounds per minute, dealing with 30 simultaneous inbound threats is an entirely different equation. Then there are the Ghadir-class submarines, which can set torpedo ambushes in shallow coastal waters and slip past many sonar systems. Iran has more than 20 of them. Mobile anti-ship missile batteries along the coastline add another ring of danger. Noor and Qadr-class missiles can reach targets more than 125 miles away, hidden in mountain passes, cave openings, and civilian structures, operating under a shoot-and-scoot doctrine, where the launcher disappears seconds after firing. And then there's the drone arsenal. Iran's Shahed and Mohajer series drones have been tested for years in swarm attack scenarios against carrier strike groups. A Shahed 136 costs around $20,000 to build. An SM-2 missile used to intercept it costs $2 million. That math is exactly why the Pentagon has quietly moved laser-based defense systems into the Gulf under a classified program. Against each of these threat layers, the U.S. has built a corresponding defense ring. Unmanned underwater systems against mines, Apache helicopters and patrol craft against fast attack boats, the stealth kill chain of the F-35 against coastal missile batteries. Around-the-clock ISR coverage over the entire strait. E-3 Sentry AWACS aircraft are tracking every movement in the air. E-11 ABACN aircraft are funneling all battlefield communications through a single coordinated network. B-52 Stratofortress rotations are on standby with the capability to deliver heavy strikes against Iranian infrastructure if it comes to that. But perhaps the most important signal Washington is sending to Tehran is this. Despite all of these risks, the United States is not backing up a single step. The goal is straightforward: drive Iranian oil exports to near zero, force the permanent reopening of the strait, and drag Tehran to the nuclear negotiating table from a position of total weakness. Those three objectives will drive every move going forward. The economic damage is already severe. Roughly 90% of the Iranian economy depends on maritime trade. Daily oil exports run between 1.5 and 2 million barrels, the vast majority flowing through Hormuz to China. If the blockade reaches full operational capacity, 80 to 90% of that revenue could vanish almost instantly. The short-term daily loss is estimated between $300 and $500 million. For an economy Tehran props up with defense spending, fuel subsidies, and domestic support programs, that's the equivalent of a controlled heart attack. Fully loaded tankers sitting at anchor near Karg Island, Bandar Abbas, Chabahar, and Asaluye have become the new normal. And then the story shifts from the Gulf to Islamabad. On the morning of April 19th, two U.S. Air Force C-17 Globemaster 3 heavy transport aircraft touched down at Nur Khan Air Base near the Pakistani capital. Roads from the airport into the city were immediately locked down. Islamabad's most prominent hotels, the Serena and the Marriott, cleared out all their guests and stopped accepting new reservations through Friday. Extensive security measures blanketed Rawalpindi and Islamabad. Certain roads and government buildings were shut off entirely. The reason, a second round of nuclear negotiations between the United States and Iran, brokered by Pakistan. What's striking is that Iran had initially rejected a new round of talks through the Pakistani mediator. But the gunfire in Hormuz on April 18th and the U.S. ultimatum delivered the following morning appear to have flipped Tehran's calculations inside out within 24 hours. Trump announced it publicly on Truth Social. The first round had been held in the same city on April 11th and ended without results. But this time, the table is being set with an entirely different kind of weight behind it. Trump's statement on the morning of April 19th left no ambiguity about the tone Washington was bringing. He said they were offering a very fair deal, and that if Iran didn't accept, the United States would destroy every single power plant and every single bridge in the country. No more good guys. The equation has become impossible for Tehran. Either they make concessions in Islamabad and genuinely reopen Hormuz, or they watch their ships get seized one by one in the very strait they thought they had shut down. This is no longer a question of whether Iran can hold the choke point. It's a question of whether Tehran can survive what comes next if it refuses to let go. The Strait of Hormuz has always been called the world's most critical oil choke point. But right now, it's something else entirely. It's a pressure point, and Washington has its thumb pressed firmly against it.